Anjana Akshuronmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakamatamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Shute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Rama Ramo Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome all of you all to our Bhagavad Gita classes once again. I highly recommend people to keep their cameras on, whoever can afford to, and whoever are in a situation to. It will really help your attention better, and it will help you focus better. And of course, it will always help me. It's always great to see people who are hearing the class. So even if you are not able to do it this time, I would highly encourage you all for the future. If you all can keep your cameras on, that will really be wonderful. So today we're going to start Bhagavad Gita chapter 1. Technically, this will be our first Gita class. So far, we have been more or less doing like an introduction to the Gita and seeing like overview of the events that have led up to the Gita. The first chapter of the Gita is called as Observing the Armies on the Battlefield. It is also called as Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So this chapter is about observations. This chapter is about the way Arjuna perceives the situation that is around him. Please remember, Arjuna is not just Arjuna. Arjuna is a representative of all of us. Krishna is speaking the Gita not only to Arjuna, but through Arjuna to all of us. So when Arjuna is observing the armies, what technically is the army? Good and bad people. There is a good side and there's a bad side. Similarly, we are like Arjuna, right in the middle. There's a good side and a bad side. Within us, we are dealing with people. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. We are dealing with people. Sometimes the same person is good and bad. We are dealing with life situations. Not all situations are always good. There are situations which are bad. So this good and bad is a part of life on a constant basis. And therefore, when Arjuna is observing the armies, remember, we are also observing our armies. We are also observing the two sides of good and bad all around us. And Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Why is this chapter also called Arjuna Vishada Yoga? Vishada means lamentation. And because, now, have you ever heard that someone's lamentation is called yoga? Have you ever heard like that? What did you do today? I did yoga. Means I cried, basically. Have you ever heard somebody say like that? I just cried and came. I just did crying yoga and came. No. Yoga is connected with something positive, uplifting, and crying is considered something negative, bad, sad. But here, Bhagavad Gita is having a combination of these two things. Arjun, Vishada Yoga, is crying and it is called yoga. How is Arjun's crying called yoga? The reason Arjun's crying is called yoga is because Arjun is crying in front of Krishna. Anything that is done in connection with Krishna becomes yoga. And because Arjun is crying in front of Krishna, technically this is called yoga. When your tears help you connect with God, those tears become a source of yoga for you. When your laughter helps you connect with God, that laughter becomes a source of yoga for you. When your efforts, when you use your hands and legs to work for God, your effort becomes yoga. That's what is called karma yoga. So anytime you bring in an element of Krishna in your life, it is called yoga. And therefore Arjun's lamentation is called yoga, because that very lamentation of Arjun is going to help him connect with Krishna even more strongly. Therefore, we are beginning today's chapter, the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, with the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is the first verse. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. So this is, the translation of this verse is very simple. Dhritarashtra uvacha, the word uvacha means speaks. Dhritarashtra is speaking, the first verse of the Gita. And what does he say? Dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha. In Dharmakshetra. What is Dharmakshetra? Kurukshetra is called Dharmakshetra. In the Dharmakshetra named Kurukshetra, samaveta yuyutsavaha, standing in front of each other. Samaveta means standing in front of each other. Yuyutsavaha means with a desire to fight. Who is standing in front of each other with a desire to fight? Dhritarashtra is saying, Mamaka means my sons. And Pandavaschaiva means the sons of Pandu. So my sons and the sons of Pandu are standing in front of each other. Dhritarashtra's question is, Kim Akurvata Sanjaya? He's asking this question to Sanjay. What did they do? After assembling together on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, what did they do? This is Dhritarashtra's question. I'm going to spend the first few weeks only on this question. And interestingly, this one question is a defining question that sets the mood of the Gita. In fact, today, we will only discuss the first word of the Gita. And what is the first word of the Gita? Dhritarashtra. That is the first word of the Gita. Now, of course, all of you all have been through the Mahabharata together. And all of you know that the whole story of the Mahabharata is about this family, leading all up to the birth of these three kids, Pandu, Dhritarashtra, and Vidura. So now we saw this whole story of Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura being born. And eventually we saw that through Pandu, the 5 Pandavas were born, and through Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, the 100 sons headed by Duryodhana were born. We saw all this as our discussion of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Mahabharata. Now, we're just going to focus on this one word, Dhritarashtra, and how this one word, Dhritarashtra, is almost the center point of the discussion of Bhagavad Gita. Dhritarashtra was a blind king. How many blind people do you know of in life? Of course, we know at least someone who is blind, isn't it? I knew of, when I was working as a patent lawyer, there was a friend of mine who was blind, totally blind. And he was also a lawyer, and he was also studying, working in patents. And I was always amazed every time I met him. And this guy, He had photographic memory almost. He obviously couldn't see anything. He only could hear. So whatever documents were on his laptop, he would hear them. And by hearing them, he would understand, and he would file cases, he would file patents, he would understand everything. Purely based on hearing. The idea of connecting with your weakness is so important and is such a part of life. All of us have some weaknesses, isn't it? There are some people who know how to use their weakness and make something good out of it. There are some people who do not allow their weakness to limit them. Here is a man, Ray Charles, an amazing musician, but totally blind. Here is another very interesting example of a person who was in the military forces, in American military forces. He was Charlie Boswell. At some point during his tenure, he lost his eyes. He just completely lost his vision due to some bomb that exploded close to him. And this man, obviously, he couldn't continue in the military forces. So he began to look at different options of doing things. And he found golf as something very interesting. And he became a golfer. Imagine a blind man playing golf. So he went on to become a very good golfer. Eventually, he went and challenged the most successful golfer of his times. Went and challenged him for a match, golf match. And imagine a blind man challenging the most successful golfer, to play a match together. And the successful golfer was pretty flabbergasted by this thought of playing with a blind person. So he wanted to be fair. So what he essentially told him was, you choose the pitch, you choose where we should play the golf course, you choose the date and time, whatever you say. This man chose a particular golf course. He chose midnight on a no moon day. Now, for this blind man, it didn't matter whether it is daytime, nighttime, whether moon is there, moon is not there. Nothing mattered. But for this guy who had eyes, it mattered a lot. And naturally, we know who won. Here is a man whose name is Azref Armagan. Blind man. But he made some amazing paintings in spite of his blindness. Now, someone who has never seen color in his life, someone who had never seen anything in his life, just with imagination, being able to do something amazing. Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? In our own country, we have so many amazing personalities who are also blind. Surdas, totally blind saint. And he was so amazing. In spite of his blindness, every day he would go to have darshan of the deities. And whenever he would go to have darshan of Srinathji, interestingly, he would compose poems about that day's darshan. And people were astounded. How can a blind person compose poetry about what the Lord is wearing? They actually began to have doubts about, about his blindness. One day, the pujaris decided to do something very strange. They decided not to put any dress on the deities, but to decorate the deities only with flowers. They thought, if he's only doing guesswork and somehow he's getting all the guesses right, let us see if we can guess this. And they actually didn't put any dress on the deities, completely blank deities, only flowers covering the deities. And Surdas came and he offered his prayers. And in his vision, he could actually envision the Lord. He was having darshan of the Lord. And he composed a beautiful poem on how beautiful the Lord looks without any clothes. And he spoke about how the Lord today is dressed in the four directions. In Vrindavan, there is a blind saint who once saw a beautiful vision of Radha and Krishna dancing as peacocks. And this blind person drew what he saw in his vision. Till date, that particular painting of this man, blind man drawing Radha and Krishna as peacocks, is still worshipped in Barsana, in Man Mandir. So the point is, Dhritarashtra being blind is not a problem. Being blind is not a problem at all. But when you are blind and you use your blindness as to your advantage, that's when it becomes a problem. In the sense, when your weakness is used as a tool to destroy somebody else. So Dhritarashtra, why is Dhritarashtra the first word of the Gita? Dhritarashtra is the first word of the Gita because what does the word mean? Dhrita means determination and Rashtra means land. So what was Dhritarashtra's determination? His entire determination, goal of life was to get the land. Rather, get property and be the king. That was the goal of his life. Now, if somebody's goal of life is to become Dhritarashtra, that means to have a lot of land, that's not a problem. But the question is, how much are you ready to do to get that land? To what extent are you ready to go to get that land? How much are you ready to destroy other people to get that land? So the word Dhritarashtra represents attachment to one's ambitions. When your attachment to your ambitions, as long as it does not affect oneself and others negatively, it's fine. But the day your ambition starts affecting others negatively, that's when it becomes a source of pain. You having ambition is not a problem. But when your ambition is causing damage, harm, hurt, destruction to so many others, that ambition becomes a cause of pain to so many other people. Dhritarashtra is asking this question very, very cleverly. And if you look at the very question itself, which we're going to be discussing over the next 2 or 3 weeks, you'll realize that the question is very cleverly worded. And therefore, Dhritarashtra, he becomes the center of this whole discussion. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavasyeva kim akurvata sanjaya. So as Dhritarashtra is asking this question to Sanjay, Dhritarashtra is remembering a lot. He's remembering everything that his sons have done to the Pandu's sons. Every single mistake that his sons have done to destroy the Pandavas. Father, blind and ambitious. Sons, also blind and ambitious. Father, blind physically. Sons, blind in their vision. And the idea of taking clue from the blindness of Dhritarashtra is what the sons of Dhritarashtra did. There's a very interesting story. One time, there was a man who went to a village. And in that village, he was just interviewing a series of people. He came across a young man, total drunkard, absolute drunkard. And he asked this young man, how did you become like this? And the young man said, I became like this because my father was like this. My father was a drunkard. I learned from my father how to be a good drunkard. This man went ahead and met a few other people. Then he met a very, very nice police officer who was trying his best to reform people, trying his best to rehabilitate a lot of people who have intoxicants. And he asked this police officer, "What is your inspiration?" He said, "My father." And this police officer said, "My father was drunkard, total drunkard. And I learned from my father that I should never become a drunkard like him." And apparently, both of them were born to the same father. They were brothers. One son learned from the father what to do, and one son learned from the father what not to do. A lot of times, our life can serve as a lesson to someone else, or it can serve as a warning to someone else. If you don't live your life properly, your life will serve as a warning to others. If you live your life properly, your life will serve as an example to others. Dhritarashtra, he taught his sons nothing but ambition that was crossing the fine line of ethics. And that's when ambition becomes greed. The moment your ambition crosses the fine line of ethics, it's no more called ambition, it's called greed. Being ambitious is not a problem. But when your ambition crosses the line of ethics and it becomes greed, that is when it starts affecting others negatively. And those ambitions are dangerous for you and for society. Look at the extent to which the Kauravas were going to destroy the Pandavas. They poisoned Bhima with a cake. Somehow Bhima survived that poison. And then they tried to burn the Pandavas in the fire of in the house of Lat, the Vanavrata. And then the game of dice was such a massive destruction of the for the Kuru race, literally. Interestingly, there is a very nice verse that Chanakya talks about how one should live one's life. He says, "Prata dyuta prasangena madhyama stri prasangata ratri chaura prasangena." He says, early in the morning, one should talk about gambling. One should study and talk about gambling. In the afternoon, one should talk about women. And in the night, one should talk about thieves. This is Chanakya's recommendation for all human beings. Now you might wonder, what is this? How is this logical? Actually, what Chanakya is trying to say is, morning one should talk about gambling. What is he saying? Morning one should study Mahabharata. And in the afternoon, one should study about women. What does it mean? He's saying one should study Ramayana in the afternoon. Why? In the Ramayana, if you study properly, all the twists in the Ramayana happen because of an entry of one woman. Manthara comes and adds one twist. Then Shurpanaka comes and adds another twist. So all the most important twists of the Ramayana happen because of women. Therefore, the Ramayana is called Stri Prasangata. And Chanakya says, Ratri Chaura Prasangena. Night you should study about thieves. What thief is he talking about? One specific thief, Makhan Chor. He's talking about Krishna. So in the night, before you go to sleep, study, read something about Krishna and go to sleep. You'll get dreams of Krishna. And that is how one should spend one's day. That's how Chanakya recommends it. So, Dyuta Prasangena, very painful experience that the sons of Dhritarashtra gave to the Pandavas. And the period of exile was so painful for the Pandavas and everything that led to that. The only hope for the Pandavas throughout this entire 13 years of exile was the presence of Lord Krishna in their lives. Time and again, whenever the Pandavas were in trouble, Krishna entered into their lives. Life is like playing chess. Our moves are called choices, and God's moves are called challenges. Every time we come across a challenge in our life, remember that God is trying to make us stronger. One time, there were two friends that were walking along a beach. And there was one man walking along a beach, and he saw something very interesting. Every time he walked along the beach, during the difficult times of his life, he saw that there was only one set of footprints. And during the easy times of his life, he saw there were two sets of footprints. Over a period of time, this man began to understand that the second set of footprints is God's footprints, and the first set of footprints is his own. And when he analyzed very carefully, he saw that during the good times of life, God was walking along with him. But during the bad times of life, God disappeared from his life. So he began to wonder, what is going on? Why is God doing like this? When I need him the most, he's gone. He confronted God one day and he asked him, what are you doing? When I need you the most, you are gone. How can I believe you? How can I trust you? You're always there with me when I don't need you, when life is going good. But when I need you, you just disappear. You let me down. God said, come on, did you observe carefully? That single footprint that you see was my footprint. And I was carrying you when you were going through the difficult times of your life. So this man, he always thought that God let him down, but he didn't realize that God is actually carrying him through it. A lot of times when we call out for God, he doesn't exactly give us what we want. When I ask God for solution to problems, rather than solving my problems, he gives me challenges, which helps me use my own wisdom to solve it. Many times we expect God to give us easy solutions. But God doesn't give us easy solutions, but rather he helps us develop the strength to deal with our problems. Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, if you study the entire Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is not going to give you solutions to the problems of life. A lot of us come to God thinking that he will solve all my problems. But really, Krishna doesn't do that. God doesn't solve all your problems. What he gives you is wisdom, with the help of which you can deal with your own problems. Bhagavad Gita is not a magic manual. Krishna is not someone who is magically there to solve all your problems in life. That's not what Krishna is meant for. Krishna is there to give you the strength to deal with your own problems. Do not expect miracles in life when you practice bhakti, when you practice the process of devotional service, but expect strength through our practice. Krishna was always there whenever the Pandavas needed him. And by being present with them whenever they needed him, he actually acted as their moral strength, moral support. People don't need solutions to the problems of life. They need someone who understands their problems. It's amazing how Krishna was always there to understand what the Pandavas were going through. And of course, he gave them some wisdom and guidance, but he didn't solve their problems. Do not expect God to become your crutch. A lot of people come to God and expect God to become their crutch. God is not like that. God empowers you with the strength to deal with your own problems. And that's what Krishna did with the Pandavas here. Dhritarashtra was silent most of the times. Throughout the Mahabharata, one of the most significant role of Dhritarashtra, silence. One of the most significant role of Dhritarashtra is absolute silence. And you know what? Silence is deafening sometimes. I'm going to tell you all two stories, amazing stories. First story is a story of a man named Butch OHare. And this guy, he was a fighter pilot in the American Air Forces. This is during the Japan attack on America. Very crucial phase of America. So Butch OHare, one day, he was on a massive ship, warship, carrying fighter planes. And this was at that point America's biggest warship. And only 2 planes were left on that warship because all the other planes had gone to attack Japan. And Butch OHare and one of his colleagues, they were left back on that ship. When they were, because their planes were having some faults, so they were taking care of the repairs of the planes. While that was happening, suddenly they saw 9 Japanese planes coming to attack the ship. And there was no one there. All the other fighter planes had gone. And just these 2 guys were left with faulty planes. Now they had 2 options. The first option was run away and save their lives. There was hardly anything they could have done anyways. The second option was try something and in the process probably lose their lives. Butch OHare and his friend decided to try. They got on the planes and they took off to try to attack these 9 Japanese planes that were coming towards them. After they took off, at some point, the friend of Butch OHare realized my plane just can't go any further. He went back. And Butch OHare alone went to attack these 9 Japanese planes. And somehow with his ammunition, he pulled down 2 or 3 planes. And then when he had no ammunitions left, he used his plane to hit on the wings of the other planes. And like that, he brought down 1 or 2 planes. And the remaining Japanese planes felt there were too many people attacking. They just felt that they are surrounded by people and they just flew back, abandoning the mission. Butch OHare became a national hero after this. If you actually go to Chicago, there is a O'Hare International Airport. It's named after this man. And right in the center of the Chicago airport is a statue of this man. And Americans go on to salute him for what he did for the country. Not only at that war, but other wars also. I'm telling you another story of this man whose name was Easy Eddie. Easy Eddie was a lawyer and he was a very shrewd lawyer. Easy Eddie was the lawyer of one of the most dangerous criminals of that time. This criminal's name was Al Capone. There's a whole movie named Godfather made after this whole Al Capone story. And Easy Eddie was his lawyer. And though there was no crime that Al Capone had committed, there was no crime that Al Capone had not committed, somehow he never ever landed in jail because Easy Eddie was there to get him out through all kinds of complicated situations. And Easy Eddie obviously got a lot of money for what he did. Easy Eddie was a rich man. One day, Easy Eddie returned home from a long day at office. And when he returned home, he saw his young son. And his son was very disheartened, very sad. Easy Eddie sat next to his boy and he asked him, "What happened? Why are you so sad?" And then this little boy told him something that shook Easy Eddie from the core of his heart. This young boy told him, "I don't like you." The father was shocked. He said, "Why?" The boy said, "I don't want to go to school anymore." The father said, "What happened?" And this boy said, "Whenever I go to school, every single child teases me that I am the son of a criminal. I'm the son of someone who supports a criminal. And they make fun of me so much." He said, "I don't want to go to school anymore." Easy Eddie was shocked to hear this because he thought he is fulfilling the most important responsibility of a father, which is, according to him, provide good education, provide good food, provide a good home, provide all the resources he needs. Every day, this boy would go in a different car. Every day, he had all the gadgets and all the facilities that he wanted, and much, much more. What Easy Eddie didn't realize is that what he was doing for his son was a secondary responsibility of a parent. But there is something known as a primary responsibility of a parent. And what is the primary responsibility of a parent? The primary responsibility of a parent is to set a good example. And that Easy Eddie had failed in miserably. That day, Easy Eddie decided, I am going to do what is my primary responsibility now. That very day, he went and exposed Al Capone, completely exposed him. Every single crime that this man had done, Easy Eddie exposed. And Al Capone was thrown into a prison. It was an island prison named Alcatraz. And from that prison, nobody ever could escape. So he was sentenced for the rest of his life there. And that very night, Easy Eddie was found dead, full body filled with bullets. Now, why did I tell you all these two stories? Just to help you understand one small thing. Easy Eddie had made a big sacrifice. And you know what was the result of that big sacrifice that he made? The sacrifice of giving a good example. His son was Butch OHare, the same guy who went on to sacrifice for his country. So now the father had done something powerful to set a good example for his son. And the son learned from the sacrifice. And he himself lived a life of sacrifice. That's what a powerful example can do. There was a man who was sentenced to life imprisonment for stealing. And this man, before he was going to be sent to life imprisonment, he was asked, do you have any last wishes? He said, I want to meet my aunt. And then he was allowed to meet his aunt. And this man hugged his aunt. And while he hugged her, he bit off her ears. His aunt was screaming in agony. And people were shocked at what he did. And this man, he said, when I stole the first thing in my life, it was a pencil in my school days. And I came and told my aunt that I stole this pencil. And my aunt never corrected me. He said, if only my aunt had corrected me that day, I would not be here on this day. The interesting thing about life is that silence is painful, especially when it is silence of leaders. Dhritarashtra remained silent for all his life. And that silence of Dhritarashtra actually caused Duryodhana to do so much. A leader is responsible to train his dependents. And it is so important to train his dependents. And a leader is responsible not only to train the dependents, but also to ensure they live in an environment that is clean and pure. As parents, guardians, friends, teachers, superiors, we are responsible for our dependents. If we do not have an agenda, we can correct our dependence. Today, most of the parents don't want to correct. One of the reasons they don't want to correct is because they themselves are at fault to a great extent. And of course, today, if parents correct their children, they'll be sued. The child picks up the phone and calls police straight away nowadays. At least that happens in America. Yeah. Still to happen in India, but we're getting there. So now, if children are so independent and not at all in a mood to be corrected, that means somewhere we have failed in our primary responsibility of setting a good example. So here, the first word of the Bhagavad Gita, Dhritarashtra. represents this, represents this kind of blind attachment, this kind of madness that has led to a massive war-like situation. So Krishna eventually, at some point, Krishna has to decide to go as a peace messenger to try to make some peace in between the warring cousins. And interestingly, why does Krishna go as a peace messenger? Krishna goes as a peace messenger simply because he wants to try. He wants to try to salvage the situation in a peaceful way before things go to the worst. Krishna is someone who tries his best to solve problems amicably. Krishna is not someone who wants to create complications and problems. He tries his best and he gives a lot of chances to people. But only when they don't accept their chances, that is when Krishna steps into the more complicated, difficult role of being a disciplinarian. The Lord always takes responsibility for those who take shelter of him. The Pandavas took intense shelter of Krishna. And because the Pandavas took shelter of Krishna, he took complete responsibility for their lives. You know, LIC has this policy. If you have seen the logo of LIC, it says, Yogakshemam Vahamiham. What does it mean? It's a Bhagavad Gita verse. But Krishna says, Yogakshemam Vahamiham means whatever you have, I protect, and whatever you lack, I provide. Life insurance policy is stolen from Bhagavad Gita. Obviously, LIC cannot provide what you lack and protect what you have. It at max can come into picture after you're dead. That's when LIC comes into picture, right? So technically it's not life insurance, it's death insurance. But Krishna actually provides us life insurance. So Krishna goes as a peace messenger and asks Duryodhana for something very simple. He tells Duryodhana, just give the Pandavas 5 villages. That's all. And why does Krishna specifically ask for 5 villages? For 2 reasons. There are 5 places where Duryodhana troubled the Pandavas the most. There are 5 villages where Duryodhana actually insulted the Pandavas. The Pandavas only asked for those 5 villages. And why did they ask specifically for 5 villages only? Because anywhere where Yudhishthir is insulted, that place gets destroyed. So the Pandavas wanted only those 5 places to protect those 5 places from destruction. And the second reason the Pandavas asked for 5 villages is because the Pandavas were very powerful people. If they're given a little, they know how to expand it. And that ability to expand from little is known as resourcefulness. All of us, we're all given little when we begin our lives. From that little, how we expand into a lot depends on our resourcefulness. Purushartha means effort. Every human being has to put in effort from his side and then grace follows. But if you're not ready to put in effort, grace won't follow. This ability to put efforts is what makes a man unique. And this ability to put efforts, no matter how many obstacles come in our path, is what makes a man very powerful. The Pandavas were willing to let go of all the enmity that they had just for 5 villages. But Duryodhana was not ready to give them even the amount of land that it takes to put a pin of a needle into it. Here we learn a very important lesson. Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. Krishna gives every sinner a chance to rectify himself. So Duryodhana here, he really had a chance to rectify himself. He really had a chance to undo all the mistakes he did and just say sorry. And his life would have been completely transformed. Unfortunately, when God gives us chances and we do not take them seriously, that's when it becomes very dangerous for us. Have you ever wondered why our windshield of the car is large and the rear view mirror is small. The front, the window of the car, why is it so huge? And why is the rear view mirror so small? Simply because we should not focus on what has gone at the back, but we should focus more on what is lying ahead in front of us. Life is all about mistakes we make. Each and every one of us have made some mistakes or the other, haven't we? Each and every one of us. There's not a single person who has not made a mistake. But life is all about going ahead in spite of our mistakes. Krishna gives us chances to rectify our mistakes and go ahead in life. And therefore, do not be stuck with the past and lament about the mistakes that we have made, but rather learn to go ahead into the future and reform. The Lord always gives us chances for transformation. But unfortunately, we need to take those chances seriously. So when Krishna came as a peace messenger, Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra were there witnessing Krishna's peace message. But unfortunately, neither Duryodhana nor Dhritarashtra understood who Krishna is. And then the Lord had to exhibit his universal form. He exhibited such a massive universal form, and that was the only form that Dhritarashtra actually saw in his life. The only thing that Dhritarashtra ever saw in his life was the universal form of the Lord. But this man, he was so blind to his attachments. He was so blind to his attachment to land and power and position that he, in spite of seeing the universal form of the Lord, he didn't understand. There is a difference between vision and sight. All of us have sight. The question is, do we have vision? This is called Pashyan Apina Pashyati. Pashyan Apina Pashyati. This is the Bhagavatam says this. What is the meaning of Pashyan Apina Pashyati? There are many things we see, yet we don't see. There are many things that are very obvious to us, but somehow we still don't understand it. Dhritarashtra saw Krishna's universal form, but still he didn't get it. Why do we not get it? Why do we not understand things? Why do we not understand the deeper imports of life, even though it is so obvious? For a very simple reason. I'm going to tell you what that simple reason is with the help of a very nice story. And this is a story that you'll remember for a long period of time. One time in Bengal, there was a marriage party which is going to the other village. The marriage was going to happen on the other village, the other side of the river, and they had to travel overnight by boat. The marriage party came to the shore of the river, and they saw a boatman there. They told the boatman, "Can you take us to the other side? We need to reach there by the next morning. The marriage is going to happen there." The boatman said, "Yes, yes, please come in." All of them got into the boat, and they all relaxed in the boat. The boatman told them, "Go to sleep. I'll take care of you all. Tomorrow morning, by the time you wake up, we'll be on the other side." And this boatman began to row, and all these people settled down and they went to sleep. When they got up the next morning, they saw this boatman sweating and sweating, rowing all night. But they were shocked to see they were exactly the same spot that they were in the previous night. They went to the boatman and asked him, "What nonsense? What have you been doing?" This boatman said, "Can't you see I'm sweating? I've been rowing all night." The villager said, "Look where we are." And the boatman saw they had not moved a single inch from where they had started. And that's when they realized the boatman had forgotten to take out the anchor. The anchor was still there. And he was rowing and rowing and rowing and rowing. And he seemed to be doing a lot of work, but not going anywhere. You know what? All of us are exactly like this boatman. We all want to go ahead in our spiritual journeys. We all want to row very far to reach our destinations in our spiritual journeys. But we all forget to take out the anchor that attaches us to some things that we're not ready to let go. Each one of us has some attachment that we are not ready to let go. And because we are attached to something material, mundane, and something that is not exactly conducive for our spiritual journeys, because we are attached to it, we are not ready to let go. And that attachment is what keeps us in Dhritarashtra consciousness. Dhrita Rashtra. Rashtra means land. And Dhrita means attached to that land. He is absolutely attached to that land. And because he is so attached to that land, he is not ready to let go. All of us have some Rashtra that we are attached to. We have to really think about what is that thing that is preventing us from going ahead in our spiritual journeys. And for each one of us, it is different. It is something else. There is something that is preventing us from going ahead in our spiritual journeys. There is something that is preventing us from taking our spiritual lives seriously. And that represents Dhritarashtra for us. That represents the mentality of Dhritarashtra for us. There's this beautiful story of how monkeys are caught in Africa. The monkeys, the hunters, they go and lay a bait. They put a small bottle with a little thin neck. And inside the bottle, they put some nuts. And the monkey puts his hand inside it. The hand goes in smoothly. The bottle's neck is it's conducive for the monkey's hand to go in. But when the monkey gets hold of the nut and pulls out his hand, the closed fist of the monkey can't come out. Now the monkey is stuck. It's a huge bottle. He can't carry it around too far. But he doesn't want to let go of the nut. What does he have to do to get his hand out? Simply let go. If he just lets go of that one nut that he's holding on to, he can find 1,000 other nuts in the forest. But no, the monkey mindset is so powerful that when it holds on to something, it doesn't let go. The question that all of us have to ask ourselves is, what is it that we have held on in our hands that we are not ready to let go? What is it that we are holding on so powerfully that at the cost of our spiritual lives, that at the cost of our most important aspects of life, we're not ready to let go of this? That's what Dhritarashtra represents. I'll tell you all a very interesting story. And this is the last story I'm going to tell you all today. One man was getting old. And his children are fed up of him. Because these children saw this old guy, in spite of becoming so old, he's interfering in business all the time. The children kept telling him, Baba, you focus on your life now, you're old, you let us handle our business, you just focus on your spiritual life. But this old man was just not interested. And he kept interfering again and again and again. So these sons called a sadhu. And they told the sadhu, please take our father, teach him some nice values, teach him to focus on some spiritual life. He's keeping on interfering in our life. So the sadhu sat with this old man and tried to explain to him a lot of nice things. But this old guy was too rigid, just not understanding it. So the sadhu said there's only one way this fellow can be relieved of his attachments. He took him to Varanasi with him. And he made him sit in Manikarnika Ghat. Manikarnika Ghat is a very, very powerful place. This is a place where dead bodies are burnt all day. So Sadhu made him sit over there and watch the dead bodies burn all day. He spent an entire day watching one after another dead bodies burn. By evening, this man started crying. The Sadhu said, wow, worked. He's crying. That means he is realizing the futility of all his endeavors. He's realizing the futility of all his attachments and all his materialistic way of living life. So the sadhu went and asked him, why are you crying? What have you learned? Can you please tell me? And this man said, I have been a fool all my life. Sadhu said, wow, what a realization this man had. And then this man said, Sadhu said, please continue. He said, I've been a fool all my life. If I only knew there was so much demand for wood, I would have never done textile business in my life. This is what he learned at the end of his life. I mean, at the end of the day, what he learned was wood business is better than cloth business. There's more demand for it. He didn't learn about detachment. He didn't learn about attachment. He didn't learn about, futility of life, nothing. He only learned that there's a lot of demand for wood over here. Some people are like Dhritarashtra. No matter how much they see, how much they experience, how much they hear, they just don't get it. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita starts with the word Dhritarashtra. That is the mindset, that is the kind of attachment that Bhagavad Gita begins with. And you know what the Bhagavad Gita is? Bhagavad Gita is a journey from attachment to detachment. The end of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is telling Krishna, my dear Krishna, I'll do whatever you say. Karishye vachanam tava. He is detaching himself from his own opinions also. So Bhagavad Gita starts with Dhritarashtra, the attachment of Dhritarashtra, and it ends with the detachment of Arjuna. So the whole journey from attachment to detachment is what Gita is. So we would like to welcome all of you all to the learnings of Bhagavad Gita, and hopefully all of us, while we are studying the Bhagavad Gita, we will also be able to learn to deal with our own attachments, whatever they are, that prevent us from going ahead in our journeys of our spiritual lives. And we will be honest enough to seek help and guidance so that we can progress in this journey. And we do not remain anchored in the very place we began from. Hare Krishna. I'll stop here. Any quick questions or comments, please?